Okay, we're continuing in Sefer Shoftim. We're in Perek Hey, Pasuk Tes Vav. In the middle of the Shira's Dvorah. We're in the middle of the third part of the Shira, where Dvorah is praising the tribes who came to help in the battle against Sisera, and she is criticizing those who did not help. And there were those, so we're continuing. She's discussed a few already, and we're on Pasuk Tes Vav. V'sarai v'Yisachar im Dvorah, and there were generals with from Yisachar that came with Dvorah. V'Yisachar kain Barak ve'emek shulach baraglov. Okay, so we got to already explain over here what's going on over here. So she's saying like this. So Metzudas explains the pshat is that with the officers of Yisachar, Dvorah sat to teach Torah amongst the Jewish people. As we know, Yisachar is the one who has great scholars, and they're not used to going to battle. These are rabbis. They're not used to going to battle. And Yisachar, with all this, still, he did this like Barak went down to battle as well. So the Sarai, the Yisachar in Dvorah, the generals, meaning the leaders, the Torah scholars went with Dvorah. Yisachar came Barak, and Yisachar did so like Barak did. The Emek Shulach Raglav, he went into the valley. He sent his feet. So, as it said in the last parak, it said Dvorah sent Barak to go down to the mountain, from the mountain to the Emek, to fight in the battle, and Barak listened to her. So he's saying, just like Barak listened to her, so also Yisachar did like Barak. And they didn't, they weren't afraid to go down. So they went down. So in other words, the same apprehensions that Barak had, but still he had bitachon on Hashem and he went down. So Yisachar is praised for doing the same thing as well. One second. And the Malbim adds that it says Sholach Baraglov, he sent with his feet, meaning to say they had no horses, they had no chariots, no great soldiers. They just basically went with their feet and nothing else, and they were willing to be Moser Nefesh to help in that area. This is the good people. These are the ones that really dedicated themselves. Okay. So now, in contradistinction to that, now we see the opposite, and now we're going to see who she's critical of. So at the end of the pasuk it says, "Biflagos Reuven Gedolim Chikei Lev." Very difficult words to translate, but she's basically criticizing Reuven, who did not help. And we'll see shortly, in a minute, in the next pasuk. She'll be discussing this more, and she'll also get to Dan. And Reuven and Dan are singled out for criticism because they did not help. Now, there's a lot of different interpretations here. Many different commentaries have all kinds of different ways of explaining this. And the word liflagos really comes from the word like peleg, to be separated. So they were different. They were different than the others. The others who did help. So biflagos Ruben Gedolim Chikei Lev, who were great people. But Chikei Lev, we'll have to see what that means as well. A lot of thought will have to be directed for them. So the Malbim goes through a whole long spiel over here, which is very interesting, but again he's emphasizing it's the criticism of Reuven and Dan who do not go to battle. And the reason why it's so noticeable is because in the days of Yeshua, Reuven was one of the tribes who was in the forefront of leading the Jews into battle. Those ones who made the condition, Reuven, Gad, and half of Menashe, they wanted to land on the Avra Yarden. so they had to be the first ones to go to battle. And Dun was also called the Masef B'chol HaMachanos. He was the rear guard, as it were, and was also important. And now they didn't come. So the Malbim goes through a whole way of explaining through the map. And so some of you have the red book that gives you the map. All right, I didn't have time to make another map. I couldn't find my old maps from Yeshua that I once gave out. And there's all different opinions, as to where these tribes were. But he basically, the Malbim's opinion at least, okay, there might be others who will argue on this, but said if you find basically all the Shoftim were close to where the battle was going on. And Har Tavor was in Yisachar. You can understand why Yisachar would be involved. Now on the map I have, if you look at the Yam Kinneret, which is up north, you should see a little bit to the left of the Yam Kinneret is Har Tavor. You got that in your map over there?
It doesn't show Har Tavor.
Okay. But it shows you the tribes?
Yeah.
Well, anyway, you just go a little bit to the left, not too far. You see that, Sid? You should see right there. You have the same picture I have. Mount Tabor. Sea of Kinneret. So that is smack in Yisachar. Right in the. But if you look all around, you have Naphtali, Zvulun, so around Menashe, right below. It's smack into a lot of tribes. And the Malbim says, now this was a little bit of a stretch, I don't know where he gets this from. He says, to the south of that, you find Yehuda, Shimon, to Bnei Yosef, and Binyamin. I mean, it's south, but like really south. I mean, if you're going all the way from the Yam Kinneret, you're going to Yehuda. Yehuda is the Dead Sea. Wow. That's quite a stretch. And he seems to say, to his left. All right, okay. I mean, he seems to imply that it's close. Okay, maybe, but he's saying once Sisera goes to attack, once they were in danger. In other words, once they will attack the Bnei Yisachar and Zvul and Naphtali, they can very easily go into, once they get through this core area of the battle, then they can just slip down very easily. And there's nothing to stop him from attacking them. On the other hand, he suggests that the ones who did not come to fight, Ruvain and Dun, they were a lot safer from being hit by battle. And even he says how the portion of Gad and half of Menashe was right across on the Ivar Yarden where the battle would be fought. If you look at Menashe and Gad, which is south of the Yam Kinneret, were relatively close in area. But if you look where Ruvain is, Ruvain's way south, east, and you'd have to pass through a lot of tribes to get to him. So that's why he's saying it would be very difficult to get to Ruvain, and Ruvain felt kind of secure because of that. Now, and that's what he says. Nachlas Ruvain v'Don hayu nifradim. They were separated. Because if the enemy wanted to come to Ruvain, he'd have to go across the Yarden through the Gilad area. And to get to Gilad, he has to go through half of Shevet Menashe. And he wanted to get to Dan, which is interesting. He says his Dan was in the Miktsah Dromis Maravis, which is the southwestern side. So you'd have to get through. Now, it must be a typo, because if you look on the map, Dun is way on the north. Do you see in your map? How's your map? Where's your map put Dun?
All the way down.
How do you like it? There's different opinions, you see, even the different maps. I don't get it. There's different opinions. And it's interesting. It's hard to understand the Malbim. He says you'd have to go to Dun is all the way in the furthest southwest. And he says you have to go through Usher. Where do you have Usher? Where do you have Usher on your map?
Up northwest.
What?
Yeah.
Usher's all the way here. He says you have to go through Usher to get to Dun. Now, in this map that we have, maybe Usher's pretty north, and I guess you have to get from Usher to done, but he puts them aside. I don't know, but I don't want to get so bogged down into the logistics. But the main point the Malbim is saying is they were least at risk. That's to say, they were furthest away. They had less to worry about. So, you know what? If I'm not in danger, I don't got to get involved. And it's not clear how many of all the other tribes got involved or not. According to the Malbim, it seems that if these ones who were criticized, must be everybody else did get involved. The Malbim is saying it makes sense the other ones got involved because they weren't that far away from danger, so they had to be involved. While these two were not involved, and therefore she is very upset with them and very critical of them, since they didn't have an immediate concern, they didn't care. And then at the end, he says, Gedolim chikei lev. He says, this is something that needs a lot of chikei lev, needs a lot of, the Malbim says, it's something that it made a big imprint on the heart, meaning it broke the heart of many of the people to see that they didn't come. Now, others learn, like chikei lev, maybe we really got to think about, do we really need to think a lot about why they didn't come? But then she goes on and describes the criticism in the next pasuk, Tesayin. One second. But you see the counterpoint that in the same pasuk, while the other tribes were not afraid and willing to risk their lives, even though they were so untrained, so these guys, which were used to battling, they have a history of being soldiers from the times of Yeshua. So the fact that he separated from this, so the Mitzuda says, Gedolim Hema Chikei Lev, means to say you got to think a lot about this to understand what is this, why they separated from the battlefield, why they weren't involved like everybody else. It's a wonder. So it's two something. Either it caused a lot to wonder, or it breaks your heart and your spirit to see that people like this were not involved. Either way, she's quite critical of them. Tezayin. And she's saying, Lama Yashavta, and she's adding on the criticism to him. Lama Yashavta Beina Mishpasayim. Why are you dwelling Beina Mishpasayim? Beina Mishpasayim means by the edge, by the border. So if you stay by the border, okay, which kinds of people live by the border? Is the border a safe place to live or not a safe place to live? It's not a safe place to live. Look, they're on the border, meaning the east bank. That means they're the closest open to attack from enemies from the outside. So if you're living by the border, you're strong, you're confident, you're not afraid to be exposed to you're the first ones that they're going to go for. Must be you're very strong, you have a lot going for you. So you can't say the excuse was, we were afraid to go to the battle, and because we're weak and all this stuff. So why did you live on the other side of the Jordan River, being a border town like that? That's the most dangerous of all places to be. So why did you choose to live there? Okay. So that it can't go both ways. You have really no excuse. You're in constant danger. And more than this, you should have had the sensitivity to appreciate the fact that the others were in danger. Okay, that's the first point.
Did Reuben and Dan say why they wouldn't come? They didn't say. So this is speculation.
Again, remember, what are we saying? The idea of a shira is it's God's way of showing Torah what's the real story going on over here. They could have given all kinds of excuses.
They didn't say
whatever, but she's being critical, using Hashem's wisdom that Hashem is giving her, saying, you guys were wrong for not coming. And she's even showing, and whatever you're going to want to say, you can see it's not true. Well, what could they have said? What could they have said? We're not used to fighting. You have a history of being fighters. We're afraid. How can you be afraid? You're living on a border, right? And now she even is according to Targum, as we'll see in a moment, is extremely critical of them. Let's just continue a little bit more in the pasuk, and you'll see why. He says, now you stood at the border, lishmoa shrikos adorim, to listen to the shrikos adorim. So what does that mean? So the simple meaning that the Mitzuda says is that you want to listen to the noise of your flocks. In other words, what are you doing over there on the border? Because you like to listen to the noise of your flocks. Because that's why they wanted it, was good grazing land, and you wanted to stay there to deal with your flocks. And didn't you know that you're going to have to go to war to defend yourself when you're such an area where there's flocks? So it's a continuation of the criticism of before, right? And she repeats, the pasuk goes, "Liflagos ruvein gedolim chikrei leiv." It's you guys separated, and it's something that again needs a lot of thought. And like why did you separate yourselves? Really, a lot of investigation has to come to the real truth as to why you guys were not involved in this. On the other hand, that's the way the Chassidus learns it. And the Malbim on those same words says, he says, it doesn't take a lot to think about it, because really you were just terrible guys. That you had nothing. He was saying, he just didn't want to be involved, and it doesn't take a lot to figure out. You guys were guilty. You guys were not good people over here. There's not much to think about judging you favorably. There isn't a lot to judge you favorable about. You wanted this. You're used to rough and tough life, and you just didn't come. Now the Targum really lets them have it, and he says you stood by the border, but he says lishma besorta domin do, to hear the news, what's going to happen over there. In other words, and you give over what people wanted to hear. L'barak atun omrin, when Barak would come to you, you'd say dilach anachnu, we're on your side. The Sisron atun omrin, what did you say to Sisro and Sisera by? Dilach anachnu, we're on your side, right? And now you want to hear which one of the sides is going to win, and you will be with them.
Double agents.
And then he says, "Halo yida'isa dekadmodi galyan machzos libo." But you should know that Hashem knows what's in your heart. When Barak comes by, you say, "Oh, we'll be with you. We'll be with you." And when sister comes by, "Yeah, we're not going to get in the fight. We're not going to get involved in this and that." You're the diplomat. You're diplomats everywhere. But at the end of the day, what did you do? You didn't do anything. And that is a terrible thing. That's a terrible thing. So don't think Hashem doesn't know the truth. You could say whatever you want to people, but now in the Shira she is exposing them and describing that you really did not behave in a proper way at all.
But tell us the reason why they didn't do it. Is it because she was a woman and she called? Because to Joshua they were willing. In fact, they were at the forefront.
Okay. We'll explain this all in a no, I mean, let's finish the criticism. Let's try to let's just finish the criticisms of them, and then we'll try to analyze what's going on over here, and why were they? Again, the Malbim will speak up. We've already said why they were so apathetic. So Malbim will explain in the next pasuk. So let's look in pasuk Yud Zayin. He says, Gilad be'ever hayarden shachen. Gilad dwelled on the other side of the Yarden. So to this, the Malbim says, this is why he didn't go. He's saying, Gilad resides right next to me, will protect my nation, and is a buffer between the enemy. So therefore, I don't have to get involved in the suffering of my brothers. In other words, he was well protected. He had nothing. He was pretty sure the battle would never reach his area. So why should I get involved? If my life is in danger, I'll get involved. My life's not in danger, so why should I get involved? There's a buffer of Gilad. I'm the furthest away. The Malbim is consistent with interpretation. Since we're not in any immediate danger, we're not going to get involved at all. Right? So that's why they didn't come. And then he adds, now he goes to the next one. Vidon and Don, Lama Yogur Anios. Why did you gather yourself onto boats? So it appears what was going on, and he goes on, Osher Yoshav L'chol Yamim, and Osher dwelt by the sea, and that's true. So if you have the map we have here, it works pretty nicely. Dun's way up in the north. He's pretty close to Osher, and Osher dwelt by the sea. Mitzarav Yishkon, and he's staying by his open cities. So we'll have to see what all this means. There's a lot of different interpretations in this pasuk over here. But, so the Malbim says simple, it's a criticism of Don. Don, why were you engaged in your business gathering boats? You didn't come to help. And why didn't you come to help? you just kept going along with your business and you weren't involved. And so why? So Mom learns Asher Yoshav L'chov Yamim, because he said, Asher is a buffer between me and the enemy as well. Asher stays by the sea over here. If you want to get to Dan, probably the easiest way is to go through Asher, and Asher is going to be a buffer, so that's some kind of protection that he has as well. And since Asher is watching the enemy, see, Asher was in a position by the sea was another place where the enemy could come, so Asher was holding his position to protect the Jews, and therefore Dan felt secure that Asher is going to protect him as well. And as well, the Metzudas explains that although Asher may not have gone to battle, Asher has an excuse. Didn't do anything wrong. Because why? Because Asher lived by the sea, and if you're by the sea, that's also a border region, and you have to be careful to protect that other enemies don't come from the sea to attack the Jews. Because as we'll see shortly, this was not just the army of Yovan and Sisera. We're going to see there were 31, just like by Yoshua and Yericho, there were 31 different countries involved in wanting to attack the Jews. It's not just Yovan. There's other nations with other Jews ready to come in at a moment's notice to finish off the job if the Jews are in trouble. So Asher was standing his post, as it were, and he was protecting the people from coming in. And as well, Asher was concerned that he wasn't that well protected himself. His cities were wide open without walls, and since enemies could come there first, he had to protect his own people as well, who were in great danger. So it seems that Asher, even though he didn't come, there was enough proper excuses in why he didn't come. But Dan, who's relying on Asher to protect him, so for Dan there's a lot of criticisms to them. Now the Targum says even much more than this. It says what Dan did was, he went over to the border, he went to the seashores by Asher and took all their stuff, took all their valuables, and they put it on boats, and they went and prepared to leave the country to protect themselves totally, and to get up. Then they moved away from Eretz Yisrael. They were getting on boats, like by the sea, just getting on, and so let's just see how things work out. If things go bad, we're going due west, and we're getting out of here. And if not, it's interesting. Like when you have, God forbid, when times get a little more difficult in Eretz Yisrael, and you have Lo Aleinu, you have the terrorists get stronger, and there's threats of war. Everybody, you have people who have children who are studying in Eretz Yisrael. The discussions: should we pull them back? Should we take them back to the States? Should come back to Canada? Shouldn't stay? It's like, okay, not that they're going to be fighters, but the fact that you're running doesn't really give a lot of encouragement to the ones that are staying there as well. So it's an issue. I mean, you could say, well, we have to judge everybody favorably. So, well, we really don't live in Eretz Yisrael. We just came here to study. We didn't come really to live, so we don't really live here, so we could go. And there are those who are cared, don't want anything after their children. But you got to realize, you can imagine how the Israelis feel with all the American students who are there to learn, and now it's a little dangerous. Boom, out they go. It kind of shakes everybody's confidence. It's not exactly something that makes everybody feel so good. So clearly these people were not helpful at all. But he gave the ones who didn't come, there were excuses, etc. On the other hand, let's just do one more pasuk to finish the segment, and then we'll discuss and analyze. On the other hand, there's always the counterpoint, Yudches. Zvulun am cheref nafsho lamus v'naftali. On the other hand, Zvulun was willing to. So Mitzvah says cheref is bizayon. In other words, to denigrate themselves, to have to put themselves in a difficult position, as it were. And in other words, Zvulun did good things, and he denigrated himself to go to war, and didn't care what was going to happen to him. And Naphtali also didn't concern himself if he's going to have to die or not. In other words, these were the ones who were willing to go to battle. Al Marome Sada, to go to the battlefields, the heights, the Marome Sada, like the plateaus of the field. So they were the ones who were, the guys who were trained, who could go, didn't go. Well, Shvul and Naphtali, they were the ones who fought, and they were willing to give their lives up. And the Malbim says, and this concludes her words, how the victory was in the few, in the hands of the few, even though they really didn't have much ability. And this is what the commentaries mention over here. This is probably the most important point that's being said over here, is that, number one, you can give all kinds of excuses, but at the end of the day, Hashem really knows the story. Hashem really knows the story. And so the Metzudas asks the question, he says, well, wait a minute. What was the command? If we go back to Perek Dalet. So Devorah is calling the shots over here. Devorah is calling the shots over here. So what did she say? So, one second. Where are we? Back over here. He says, go. She says, Perek Dalet Pasuk Vav says, go and pull to Har Tavor and take with you 10,000 men from Naphtali and Zvulun. Perek Dalet Pasuk Vav. Take 10,000 men from Naphtali and Zvulun. So it's Naphtali and Zvulun. Shouldn't ask anybody else to go. Shouldn't ask anybody else to go. So that's what the Metzudah says. I'll just read what he says. Im Keshem Siva Lakachas and Ukha B'nei Zvulun and Naphtali. Right? She didn't command to get any other tribes. So even though that's the case, says the Metzudah, she complained about them. They didn't come themselves. Like other tribes volunteered. In other words, other tribes volunteered. So why don't you volunteer? And that's an important point.
Sorry, can I have a question?
Yes, ma'am.
But wasn't this Reuben's tribe involved with this adultery and all that close activity?
Were they involved in idolatry? Everybody was involved in idolatry to some extent.
Don't talk about
No, not only Reuben. Reuben had the same problems others had. Had the same problems that others had. But the criticism is, if others were able to go, so why not?
I think that is the reason they were just shunned from.
No, but the others. But we already seen that the other tribes were also.
They were shunned from going to the battle. If I say that, am I right? They were forbidden to go to the battle because they were doing.
No, but there were others. There were others involved in idolatry too. We already seen the criticisms of the Jewish people, and the others helped. The others did help. So you're involved in idolatry. So what? You got to help your brothers. So this is like.
What are you talking about?
To go to battle. To go to battle to help them. The generation wasn't so great to begin with, right? So there were others who were. A lot of them were into idolatry, right? So why don't you?
Isn't Hashem involved in this?
What?
Isn't Hashem involved in this battle?
Of course, Hashem is involved, and that's precisely the point. That's precisely what the Meforshim explained. But nobody knows, how much until you get to the battle. You don't know how much Hashem is going to be involved. You don't know how much Hashem is going to be involved. You have to do what you can to help out, and that's what Meforshim say. At the end of the day, it's so interesting. At the end of the day, they didn't need them. Reuben wasn't needed, and they're still criticized.
Yeah.
So think about that. Think about that. If really we didn't need you, we did fine without you. But don't you want to be part of the Kiddush Hashem that was involved? In other words, after the story, it's easy to know what the story was. But before the story, you don't know what the story is. The Jews were not really that wonderful. In fact, the matter that Barak himself was afraid to go to battle alone. She had to push him. And he said, I don't think I got the merits myself to do it. You're a tzaddikus. If you come with me, I'll have a little more courage. Right? And so it was a question of how much bitachon did the Jewish people have in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But one thing's for sure, you see your brothers are in danger. How could it be that you as a Jew, you're seeing your brother in danger, just sitting there, Shalom Alav Nashi, that everything is fine? And even if, So, and at the time, nobody could be so sure Hashem was going to help. Dvorah said. Okay, Dvorah said. And that was only right when they were already in battle formation. But you hear what's going on, you know what's going on. So what do? You're playing both sides of the fence? Well, yeah, we'll be with you if you need us. And you're just sitting there. And you tell sister the same thing. She's just not getting involved. So we see how the criticisms of not getting involved, even if you're not asked. You see that they're in trouble. It's going to be a bloodbath. I mean, you got to remember. Let's look at what we had. We were outnumbered. What was it? 60-1. What did we say it was? Yeah. Incredible numbers. Right. Incredible numbers. And they had the tremendous artillery. And these guys were not battle tested. So it looked like a bloodbath. Right? So even if you're not commanded, you got to come. Well, how's not to come? He says, well, I'll just sit back there. I'll tend to my sheep. Again, this was always the criticism, the real criticism of Ruvain and this Chevra was that they sought a life of materialism. That's why they asked for it to begin with to be on the East Bank, because it was lush meadows, and they sought materialism. And when you seek materialism, the spiritual strength isn't there. So it's interesting, and at the end of the day, you weren't even needed. At the end of the day, what happened? At the end of the day, Barak just goes down there, and miraculously these guys get destroyed. And Barak didn't do anything. But he will still get credit for the courage that he had. He had a lot of courage. He's praised, and forever the Jewish people are indebted for him. Why? Because it was that courage that enabled the miracle to kick in. So now, you see your brothers are in trouble, and you're not interested at all. You're not doing anything. You're sitting there. So that is a tremendous criticism that she gives to them.
Isn't this, I guess, a valid criticism of all of us who live in Kutzlaritz? And, I'm not saying we go and fight, but even not being there and participating in the economy and helping the strength of the country, we're just worried about our materialism here, essentially.
Okay, I mean, there's a lot. That could be a good point. There's a lot to discuss. There's a lot to analyze over here. Certainly, we should help them. And certainly, we shouldn't live as if it's not our problem. That's for sure. And certainly, we shouldn't play both sides of the fence. You have to vocally say we support our brothers, or like when the mayor spoke on Shabbos. Non-Jews say, what's wrong with the two-state solution? You have to verbally say, even though it's not the politically correct thing to say, you have to at least show that you're supporting them. To the extent that you can support them depends on what's reasonable and practical. And where you're going to send your support is also a question. There's a lot of sticky questions. Just giving money blindly to Eretz Yisrael is not necessarily the smartest thing to do. But there's plenty of support that's needed in so many ways, and definitely you have to give your support in so many ways. I mean, in the past, we helped a lot of the bulletproof stuff that was needed to help.
Yeah, but it's still not the same as...
Okay, not everybody can just get up and move and without it having detrimental effects to their families. You have to know, and there are still those who have to be protected here. So again, it's a deeper discussion beyond, but clearly, no matter what it is, Canadian Jews cannot just say there's like nothing going on in Eretz Yisrael. To what degree one has to be involved, you have to ask your own rabbi to know, and your situation is how you should be involved. I know when it was the real intifada, that's what I told the mayor, we were there. When nobody else wanted to visit, we were there all the time, even though many wives of our husbands were scared to death, why are you going? And that was the time to be there. Now, I mean, it's nice people are going now, but now it's more of a holiday than anything else. It's fine too, I'm not saying it's bad, but when it was really tough, nobody showed up, except for the few people, and those are the people who really, and that's when they really needed you to come. That's why I'm not pushing so much the guys to come as much as we did before, because of course there's enough people, the planes are all full, and they're going to be full with or without us. Well, God forbid, when the time is the planes are empty, that's when they need us, that's when we come.
One more thing, there's no allusion or talk that some of them were studying Torah to help strengthen the battle and by studying Torah versus actually fighting? Like, could we say that today?
Well, obviously there were only 10,000 troops who went to battle. There were lots of other people, and they could have...
Reuben or Gad.
Gad and Reuben were not noted for their Talmudic study.
So the ones that were studying were in the battle, right?
Well, I don't know if all of Yisachar was a big tribe, but they whatever she asked for, they sent out. She said, I want 10,000 from you. So they take 10,000, probably the 10,000 biggest tzaddikim. And so the rest of you guys sit and learn in yeshiva because you only asked for 10,000 from our tribes. That must have been another thing. But Reuven and Dan were not known, Reuven and Dan were not known for that Talmudic scholarship, especially Reuven. Reuven is very much involved in watching his sheep, right? And Dan also, it appears, according to the Targum, they went and took all the stuff and got them on boats ready to leave. It wasn't like they were really helping a lot. And in Asher, we say, he was busy protecting the border, so he was doing his job, not everybody had to come. And it's interesting, one of the other Meforshim, and I'll get to your point, one of the other Meforshim says, and that's why, he says, what about other ones? She doesn't mention specifically Yehuda, Shimon, Gad. They're not in the picture at all. So why aren't they mentioned? So this is, as opposed to the Malbim's shot, the Parshios over here says, they were so far away, they may not have heard this at all. The communication could be so much that they didn't know about it. So it's not because they were afraid or because they didn't want to contribute. That's not it. But the ones that knew, right? That's a different story. And we can even say that Yehuda and Shimon, they already did fight battles. They were the first ones mentioned in the Sefer to go fight when they need to battle. So it's not that they were afraid, not that they weren't willing to risk their lives. We see that they did fight. Could very well be they didn't know, or they wouldn't call, and they didn't know about it. While the other ones, here's the point. Shevet Levi, they never have a portion anyway. They never were fighters. They're the ones who have to serve. So the point that's being brought over here is, it could very well be there were a lot who didn't fight. Could be there were a lot who didn't fight. Some were mentioned that helped beyond the two tribes who were commanded to help. But many weren't mentioned at all. But she isn't critical of them. So what does that mean? It means, at the end of the day, Hashem knows who's got valid excuses, who doesn't have valid excuses. When we say, how come you didn't come? He said, I didn't know. Well, did you really not know, or did you know? Hashem will know this. So this is what the Shira exposes. The other ones, I don't have any kindness on them. Either they didn't hear about it, or there's other reasons they didn't come. There were legitimate reasons. But you guys, you had no reason not to come, and because of that, I'm very critical of you. So at the end of the day, when a person has to decide, do they help or do they not help, you have to know, one day there'll be a Shira song. And the Shira will be sung and will say, you should have been there. And why weren't you there? And it'll be very critical. And the others, if they had a good reason, they have a good reason.